Couple important federal civil court results this week to talk about, both of them, unsurprisingly, having to do with local pushback against the Trump administration. We're going to start with a victory, at least at the sub-Supreme Court level, for Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell and a bunch of her other state AGs. A judge said an executive order from the president signed on day one, so this goes back a while, that stopped wind farm permitting was unlawful. And for background, here's the president talking about wind turbines and power at the UN in September.
They're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate. Then they have to be rebuilt all the time, and they start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived.
And I was going back and looking at the executive order this morning. It cited so many alleged problems with windmills, claiming or suggesting that they disrupt ocean currents, that they're bad for marine life, that they damage the fishing industry, that they increase energy costs for ordinary people. It's really remarkable the intensity of the antipathy that the president has for wind.
And a really big deal, I hope I don't even have to say, for Massachusetts. I mean, under, believe it or not, another Republican, though a very different kind of, when Charlie Baker really took off here, big emphasis and considered to be a really important part of the state's long-term energy plan. And of course,
yeah, it's a huge part of the state's effort to cut emissions and hit targets over the next few decades, for sure.
And New Bedford has been gearing up with an industry and jobs. Salem was getting ready to start jumping in too.
It's also a massive priority for Governor Healey. She said back in her inaugural address that she wanted Massachusetts to lead the world in clean tech development. So, yeah, for now, this is good news. Although I have to say, if I were, I am no wind company CEO, Mark, as you know, but if I were in charge of a company that was investing in wind energy, I'd still be pretty ambivalent, because you mentioned this is the sub-Supreme Court level. Yeah. When was the last time we heard the Supreme Court had limited the president's ability to sort of flex his muscle when it comes to federal agencies under his jurisdiction, or possibly under his jurisdiction? I don't think it's been happening. So. I expect this to be appealed. I expect it to go to the Supreme Court. And based on past precedent, I would not be surprised if this is a temporary win.
Yeah, I think so too. It's interesting. We were trying to speculate. I think you had an idea, perhaps. I don't know if you want to float it out there on where this antipathy from the president against wind power comes from.
Oh, I don't know if this is. I've not delved deeply into this, but I read this morning as I was reading about this topic that he actually brought a lawsuit involving a wind farm development near one of his golf courses in Scotland, and lost the lawsuit, and ever since then has headed in for wind. But as we heard, from that wild clip, he's got 1,000 other reasons that he really, really, really doesn't like wind power.
Another federal court case, very different kind of one. Tufts grad student Rümeysa Öztürk, who's from Turkey, she won a request to get her student visa record reinstated. She, of course, was detained by ICE earlier this year over a pro-Palestinian op-ed that she wrote in a student newspaper, at least according to a federal judge. That's why she was detained.
Right.
She's since been released, and the Trump administration, I want to emphasize, is still trying to kick her out of the country, but this was a win for her.
Yeah, she gets to resume her graduate studies. That's why she came here. It's a win for her in a very narrow personal sense, big win for her, but in a narrow personal sense. When you think about the chilling effect that the video of her detention and what she experienced and why she experienced it is going to have on international students. I tried to play the role of wind farm executive a minute or two ago. If I were an international student, knowing what happened to Rümeysa Öztürk, it would make me think twice or three times about heading to the U.S. To complete my grad studies, as opposed to going to Canada, maybe somewhere in Europe. It would give one pause, I would think.
Yeah. And as we said on the last court case, and as you're emphasizing, it's just a partial win. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said, and I believe he's not wrong on the law, that having a student visa is simply a privilege.
This may well work its way to the Supreme Court as well. And I once again would not be surprised if the court agreed with the Trump administration, with the Secretary of State. We shall see. But I think really this is so much about symbolism and sending a message. And the Trump administration, the message they wanted to send with Rümeysa Öztürk's detention remains and has been amplified actually beyond what they could have, I think, hoped for at the outset. So again, a narrow personal victory for her, but maybe a bigger loss for certain societal forces, people who don't want to see people detained by ICE, for dubious reasons, I think have good reason to remain disappointed by the way this played out.
We're going to switch things up, get away from the federal courts now. The Brockton mayoral race is still unresolved more than a month after Election Day. I will say, whoever of these two candidates battling over the result wins, it is an historic one for the city, and I'll let you explain all that.
Well, Brockton is the first black majority city in New England, and they now have their first mayor of color in Moses Rodriguez. He won this recount, this 4-day recount that involved the mayoral contest, but also all these down ballot races in Brockton. It affirmed the results from election night. Moses Rodriguez beat John Bradley Durenencourt by 259 votes. But Durenencourt has said, and he said this when I talked to him before the recount was resolved, that he is going to take this to court before in the inauguration. He claims that the recount uncovered a whole bunch of ballot irregularities. He basically has accused Rodriguez of ballot stuffing. And he said that, ballots were left out in unsecured locations, that they were found in places where they should never have been in the first place. So he says he's going to court. I don't know what his chances of success are, but his claims of election irregularities are manifold.
Right. And just to underscore, even were he to be successful, he would be the first black mayor of Brockton in its history as well.
Oh, right. Two men of color,
Yes.
squaring off here.
Yes. And, city's been around a long time, and it had plurality of black residents even before it was a majority. It's an interesting city, and a lot of them are African immigrants and Caribbean immigrants. So it's going to be a big day for that city, whoever
Maybe
wins.
a harbinger of future changes to come in other gateway cities in Massachusetts, too.
Mm.